Hello, my name is Becky, and I'm one of the pastors here at Resonate. These past few months, we've created some new rhythms for our in-person Sunday morning gatherings. Now, we realize many of you have not been able to be with us in person, and so our hope is to give you, at home, an opportunity to experience a little of what we've been doing these Sunday mornings. A couple of Sundays ago, we did a spiritual practice-focused gathering where I led us through the practice of writing our own laments. We have been through a lot as humans in the past year, and most recently, the events of this first month of January. Our goal in this session was to hold a safe space to turn toward God and our heavy hearts, to grieve as individuals and as a community. So, I'd like to lead you through that practice today. Whether you're watching this in January of 2021, or later, we humans go through many experiences and events that bring us sadness, anger, uncertainty, or frustrations. A lament is a place we can bring all of that emotion to God, who is able to take our pain. First, I want you to open up a browser on your phone or computer and go to resonatelife.org/spiritual-practice. There you will look for the order of practice dated January 17, as well as the worksheet for writing our own lament. You can use these to follow the scripture I'll be reading and the steps for writing our own lament. The words will also be posted on the screen for you to follow along there. First, I'm going to start with lighting our Christ candle. And if you have a candle at home, I encourage you to light that along with me during our practice. A candle for a Christ candle is a visual reminder that Christ is always with us. Christ is present with us in this space and has already come. Before I share a little about the idea of lament, I want to read Psalm 42. Just like a deer that craves streams of water, my whole being craves you, God. My whole being thirsts for God, for the living God. When will I come and see God's face? My tears have been my food both day and night, as people constantly questioned me, "Where's your God now?" But I remember these things as I bear my soul, how I made my way to the Mighty One's abode, to God's own house, with joyous shouts and thanksgiving songs, a huge crowd celebrating the festival. Why, I ask myself, are you so depressed? Why are you so upset inside? Hope in God, because I will again give him thanks, my saving presence and my God. My whole being is depressed. That's why I remember you from the land of Jordan and Hermon, from Mount Mizar. Deep called to deep at the noise of your waterfalls. All your massive waves surged over me. By day the Lord commands his faithful love. By night his song is with me, a prayer to the God of my life. I will say to God, my solid rock, why have you forgotten me? Why do I have to walk around, sad, oppressed by enemies? With my bones crushed, my foes make fun of me, constantly questioning me. Where's your God now? Why, I ask myself, are you so depressed? Why are you so upset inside? Hope in God, because I will again give him thanks, my saving presence and my God. The psalm we just read together is one of the Psalms of Lament. You may have felt some of the text oddly familiar to you as we read it. Psalm 42 was written by people who had formerly been able to worship God with the Lord's people, but something had changed, and now they find themselves removed from the religious life they formerly enjoyed, and they miss it greatly. Sounds pretty familiar to our current pandemic situation, doesn't it? It's been difficult not to be able to meet together as we freely did before. And though we know this is a temporary arrangement, we still feel immense loss and pain from not being able to live life and gather in a way that feels normal. Not to mention, we've had a crazy start to 2021 with the U.S. Capitol riot, impeachment hearings, and presidential inauguration. Deep breaths, everyone. About 40% of the Psalms are classified as laments. What percentage of songs in our current worship gatherings do you think could be classified as laments? Is it 40% or lower? Most believe it's somewhere around 5 to 10%. And are we more comfortable with happy worship? My friend calls this happy church. Than we are with honest worship, which includes many facets. Thanksgiving, praise, and laments. Ecclesiastes tells us there is a time for crying, and a time for laughing, a time for mourning, and a time for dancing. Has church become the last place where grief and suffering and loss is expressed? What about our ability to be honest about our struggle and pain before God? Have we conditioned ourselves so well to avoid pain that we put on a happy face and fake our way through? Why are we afraid of pain? We as humans really struggle to sit with our pain. Most of us would rather run from our pain than to face our pain. We feel ashamed to be sad. We tell ourselves and each other to buck up, or it will get better, when we're not really sure that it will. We tell each other to smile because we feel uncomfortable with someone else's sadness or pain. I'm reminded of when I was in my 20s. I worked as a receptionist in a medical office. There was a patient who walked in and said, "Smile." I wanted to say, "I'm smiling on the inside. My face just isn't showing you." We're taught, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So we hide our anger or pain. But pain demands to be felt. If we continue to suppress our pain, it will eventually come out in not so healthy ways. I'm going to repeat that. Pain demands to be felt. If we continue to suppress our pain, it will eventually come out in not so healthy ways. Lament is a vehicle that carries us toward healing. It is a form of speech to protest the powers that be, a safe place for your pain to be felt. We're going to practice writing our own laments today by learning the 9 steps of lament developed by Jenna Perrin, a counselor and therapist. We'll do these 9 steps in 3 stages, allowing time for you to write using some prompts to help you through the process. So if you haven't already downloaded the handout, I recommend you pause the video and do that first. You can find the handout at resonatelife.org/spiritual-practice. And so we begin with page 1 with some guidelines, and we identify our pain. With lament, we are not just angry, frustrated, journaling, or writing that letter that we'll never send. We are following God's lead to speak out our pain. God is the only one who can meet us in the middle of our pain, receive our pain, and heal it. We don't have to pretend with God. God can take whatever it is you need to say. He is acquainted with your grief and will bear it with you. Notice the first question. What do you want to lament? This is where you identify the pain, suffering, or loss that you want to bring to God. Whether it's the losses you're feeling in the pandemic life, or the agony of watching our country in opposition, or whatever it is, your pain, great or small. And then consider a metaphor to describe your pain. There are some examples there on the left, like unrelenting rain, or shattered glass, or you may come up with a metaphor of your own. Take a couple minutes of silence to identify your pain and what you want to lament. You can pause the video. For the next couple of minutes are yours to write. Next is page 2. This is stage 1. First, how do you want to address or cry out to God? Creator, Rock, Abba. A side note, this is a name, Abba, that I found great comfort and meaning in. The actual Aramaic transliteration is Abwoon, which is a blending of Abba, Father, and Woon, or womb. Jesus' recognition of the masculine and feminine source of creation. There are some examples in the left column of how some of the psalmists address God. Second, what is your complaint? Bring your distress to God. Lay it all out. Affirm where God is or has been in your life. Where have you experienced divine love at work in your life, others' lives, or around you? Take a few minutes to identify your pain and what you want to lament. You can pause the video. The next few minutes are yours to write. Page 3. This is stage 2. With this next stage, we're walking deeper into the valley. If you've ever been to a counselor or spiritual director, they might ask you to share more of what's on your heart. Tell me more, or what else? And then, what is your deepest desire or need? Has God intervened in the past in a way you want to remind God of? And then, do you have any enemies in this situation? Pretending we have no enemies is not beneficial or honest. Don't protect your words because you think God can't take it. If you have enemies, tell God and trust that God can take it. Again, there are examples on the left of how the psalmist walked through their own valley. Take a few minutes to walk deeper, telling God your deepest desire or need. You can pause the video here. The next few minutes are yours to write. And page 4. This is our final stage. Stage 3 is where our lament begins to turn a corner. What do you need from God? How can you acknowledge God is listening to your lament in this moment? And what promise of praise can you offer to God? And then what attribute can you thank God for? If you're struggling with this, what thing, person, event, big or small, can you thank God for? Again, there are examples on the left of how the psalmist began to walk out of their valley. Take a few minutes, tell God what you need, if you're able. Acknowledge that God hears you, or is there something you can be thankful for? You can pause the video. The next few minutes are yours to write. Okay, so you just wrote a lament, or maybe it's a start to a lament. I want you to pause the video one more time and take these final few minutes to rest in what you've lamented to God. Maybe reading over what you have written in a final prayer. As we close our lament time, think back to these 3 stages. The first stage was like a descent into the valley, where we acknowledged our pain and felt ourselves move into a time of disorientation. This second stage took us downward, deeper into that valley. And the third stage was a rising out of the valley. Walter Brueggemann calls this the movement of dismantling, from orientation into disorientation. And that, quote, "It can be quite personal and intimate, or massive and public. Either way, it is experienced as a personal end of the world," end quote. As we move through the stages, we begin to shift from disorientation to a new orientation. This process follows the paschal or salvific movement of life to death, to resurrection, to new life, which brings us through to greater transformation. We don't know how long it took David or the other psalmists to write their psalms. David may have set it down and come back to it 6 days or weeks or months later. The only way is through, and through death we rise. The last thing I want you to do is to consider sharing your lament. Our laments have more power when we share them. Most of the Psalms were written to be shared together in worship, not to be kept alone. Friends, thank you for joining me as we walked through the practice of writing our own lament. I pray this practice is one you come back to as many times as you need. May you find the help, healing, comfort, and mending from our loving Abba, God, as you work through your own laments. And I have a final benediction for you. May you demand to feel your pain. May you embrace the journey through. May you die so that you will rise. May the Lord lift up the light of the Lord's countenance upon you and give you peace. In your going out and in your coming in your sitting and in your rising, in your work and in your play, in your joy and in your sorrow, in your laughter and in your tears, until that day comes which is without dawn and without dark. Go in peace.